Breaking news. Donald J. Trump has declared war on the Federal Reserve, and he believes that the Fed is a bunch of DEI, green energy obsessed fanatics. Welcome back to Strongman Personal Finance. So let's listen to a clip from Donald Trump, read a truth that he posted on Truth Social, because if you post on Truth Social, it must be the truth. And then we're going to talk a little bit about interest rates. And I'm no macroeconomist, but I at least have a basic understanding. Okay? So let's see this quick clip from Geodis himself. President Trump says he'll demand that interest rates drop immediately. Drop them now, bro. That's all it takes.
I'm also going to ask Saudi Arabia and OPEC to bring down the cost of oil. You got to bring it down, which, frankly, I'm surprised they didn't do before the election. That didn't show a lot of love. With oil prices going down, I'll demand that interest rates drop immediately, and likewise, they should be dropping all over the world. Interest rates should follow us.
Okay, so apparently he's going to drop the price of oil, which leads to dropping interest rates. And the reason he believes that is because when you drop oil prices, that trickles through the entire economy, and that generally reduces prices. Well, number one, I would say OPEC might disagree with you on that one, and they're a cartel, and they can potentially artificially cut production in order to maintain oil prices, to maintain their profitability, because a lot of their societies depend on oil profitability. We'll see what happens with OPEC and all that good stuff, okay? But the theory is you unleash American energy, that massively drops CPI, and bada bing, bada boom, oh my God, everything's going to be solved. Now, let's go look at this truth that he posted. Because Jay Powell and the Fed failed to stop the problem they created with inflation, I will do it by unleashing American energy production, slashing regulations, rebalancing international trade, and reigniting American manufacturing. But I will do much more than stopping inflation. I will make our country financially and otherwise powerful again. So let's parse through this statement. Jay Powell and the Fed failed to stop the problem they created with inflation. Jay Powell and the Fed did not cause inflation. You know what caused inflation, ladies and gentlemen? The pandemic. The world ground to a halt. Supply chains were disrupted. Money was thrown around like crazy. Everybody got a stimmy check. Everybody was flush with cash because they had to do so in order to keep the economy afloat. So there were less goods and services being produced, but the money supply was not reduced commensurate with that, which naturally, at least in my brain, would lead to inflation. Do you notice inflation wasn't that bad before about March 2020? Do you notice that a trend suddenly started to pick up around March, April, May 2020? That's right. That was right during the lockdowns. Now, was that Trump's fault? No. Was that Jerome Powell and the Fed's fault? No, it was not. Okay, unless we just were going to shut down the economy and literally do nothing. So we can see inflation month over month was basically, we almost had deflation. We almost had a negative increase in inflation right around when the lockdowns happened. And then right after that, because of all the stuff that we did, money printing, here's free money for everybody, let's disrupt supply chains, fewer goods and services, but larger money supply. Okay, we peaked at 9.1% inflation. And you know what the Fed did? They raised interest rates, federal funds rate. And they started to unwind their balance sheet, which basically destroys money. And the inflation rate started to go down. You notice the inflation rate peaked at 9.1 and now it's all the way down to 2.9. That seems like they did something and it worked. Okay? And not everything comes from gas. Not everything comes from fuel. Sure, making gas cheaper would probably lower inflation a little bit, but I don't think it's going to massively lower inflation to the point where we can just suddenly cut interest rates, especially with some of the policies that he's talking about. So American energy production, I mean, obviously I think OPEC will have something to say about that. Slashing regulation, okay, maybe. Rebalancing international trade and reigniting American manufacturing. How does disrupting international trade with tariffs, which are going to come from our end in retaliatory tariffs, and reigniting American manufacturing, which we've outsourced because it was cheaper, but now we're going to bring home, so we have to do all this investment here and pay American workers a lot more. Whether that's a good or bad thing, it's probably going to be a little bit inflationary. I'm just saying. Apparently, that's going to stop inflation. But the Fed failed. Obviously, the Fed did nothing. The Fed caused this inflation. It was just basically the Fed, bro. And then all this massive decline in inflation rates was totally because of, I don't know, somebody else did that apparently, but not the Fed. It wasn't raising the interest rate. Wonderful. The Fed has done a terrible job on bank regulation. Aren't we? But you just said we're cutting regulation. Treasury is going to lead the effort to cut unnecessary regulation and will unleash lending for all American people and businesses. So apparently now we want to unleash lending. We need to grow the economy. We need to lend money to everybody. That's never ended in catastrophe before. Remember when America almost destroyed the world through toxic loans that they gave out? Yeah, America did that. God bless America. Apparently that's going to, I don't know, make it better. That's going to stop inflation, bro. I guess if we destroy the economy again, that'll have a negative impact on inflation. If the Fed had spent less time on DEI, gender ideology, green energy, and fake climate change, inflation would never have been a problem. Yes, it wasn't because of the lockdowns and the massive government stimulus and the supply chain disruptions. It was because of DEI, gender ideology, green energy, and fake climate change. Instead, we suffered from the worst inflation in the history of our country. Now, I'm pretty sure inflation was probably a lot worse. I don't know how far back this can go. Yeah, we definitely had way worse inflation in the 1980s, the 1950s. I don't know if that was a result of the Korean War or whatever. Right after World War II, and, right during the start of World War II. But sure, what we recently had, besides these other 4 or 5 events, inflationary events, what we recently had was the worst inflation in our country's history. Makes total sense. Now, as we can see, this is the effective federal funds rate, which the Fed directly controls. They can do that. They can control the federal funds rate. It's like an overnight lending rate compared to the market yield on U.S. Treasury securities, 10-year treasuries. We can see that in the past year, Treasury yields, 10 years, have gone up while the Fed's fund rate has gone down. Look at that. The Fed funds rate as of September 17th, 2024, roughly, was at 5.33%. And the 10-year was at 3.65%. Just a few months later, now the Fed's fund rate has dropped by 1%. And the 10-year Treasury rate has increased by right around 1%. So we can see that interest rates, short and long, have diverged. So it looks like the Fed can have an immediate impact on the federal funds rate, the overnight lending rate, but they may not be able to have such an immediate impact on the 10-year rate. I think the only way they could do it would be to buy long-term treasuries. I guess that's how they would do it. But most of the treasuries out there are short-term, so I don't know how much that would impact it. So long-term rates have gone up because of inflation expectations, partially because of his election. Yeah. So he got elected in November. Let's see. So in November, the 10-year was 4.31. And just a few months later, it's 4.55. And it almost touched 5. It went to 4.78. So I'm just not seeing how the Fed failed because of DEI and how he can just demand that interest rates go down. You kind of want separation between the Fed and the U.S. government, because the U.S. government's incentive is to always pump the economy because people want to get reelected. So if you turbocharge the economy, you cut rates, there's going to be more money sloshing around. There's going to be more lending. Everybody's going to be buying. The economy is going to have a nice little sugar rush. But in the long run, that could potentially lead to some devastating consequences. And you can see that the Fed is currently unwinding their balance sheet. So when the Fed buys something from the open market, that basically injects money into the economy because they're taking something out of, like a treasury, for example, out of circulation, and they're pumping money into the economy. They're giving money to banks, for example. Let's say they buy a treasury from a bank. Well, now the bank gets that money and they have more money to lend, and that does the bank multiplier effect. And when they reduce their balance sheet, they're basically taking money out of the economy. So they're reducing the amount of money in circulation, which impacts the price of the money and the amount of times that the money can circulate throughout the economy. So I think their methods have overall been effective for what they've done. We haven't had a recession yet. We massively reduced inflation after a black swan event. And I don't think, I don't like DEI. I don't think the Fed is at fault here. So Trump demanding to lower interest rates is simply, it's a political move to juice the economy and, increase lending and blah, 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 juice the stock market so he can claim victory. In the long run, if the economy's not ready, if it's too soon to cut rates because of future potential inflation threats, that's going to be an issue. So you can already see Trump and the Fed are going to be clashing. The Fed wants to take its sweet time. Let's make sure inflation is gone. Let's make sure that we're back to normal. Because the economy's humming along. The economy's doing fine with 4% interest rates. Short-term rates. Is the economy crashing? No. What's the freaking rush? Besides government finances, which are a freaking disaster. But the fact that we need to cut rates now. Why? I think it's stupid, personally. It's just a political move, a political gambit. So, I don't really know what he's talking about here. If they had DEI, I don't think I'm sure they did, but I don't think it was the reason that we somehow failed on stopping inflation when we clearly had some inflation because of the pandemic, not because of the Fed. And then they did a pretty good job, in my humble opinion, of reducing the inflation rate. I don't know what you guys are seeing. Maybe I'm the crazy one, but that's what I see here. So we're going to see what kind of war and conflict derives from this drama. Book a free tax consultation with me. I'm a certified public accountant. Let me do your business or personal taxes any state in the United States. Free consultations, upfront quotes. Let me prepare your taxes. I've done taxes for going on 4 years now. Second tax season as an independent tax CPA. And I'm better than everybody else in the world because I'm strong, man. Hi, strong. Yeah, I got a very strong throat. In my second poop break in 10 minutes just to listen to strong, man. I don't know if I'll make another video. We'll see. They don't hire enough blue people like me. Blue people discrimination. Is Powell allowed to trade stocks? I don't know. Congress can. That's perfectly fine, bro. Since you called out sick, are we getting a strongman marathon today? I don't know how much I have, what else I have to talk about. I haven't been watching the news recently. I've been out. U.S. stocks, bro. I got my French and Mexican passport just in case Trump collapses the country. Yeah, I'm kind of stuck here. So I was wrong about Trump. Strongman is right. It's DEI Democrats versus grifting Republicans. Yeah, everybody's like, why'd you vote for Trump? I don't like grifting. I really don't like DEI. And a lot of the stuff he's doing makes me very happy. Woo-hoo! Oh man, just seeing the feds have their meltdowns. Oh my God, we have to go back to the office. Oh, it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Losers. All right, book a free tax consultation with me. That's right, you can talk to me for free. I'll give you an upfront quote and I'll prepare your business or personal taxes, any state in the United States, and you have a wonderful, delicious afternoon. Cheers.